Forbidden Origins, Episode 2, What's Happening in Space? In the first episode, we revealed the stance of the mainstream scientific community regarding our origins, along with a glimpse of the alternative possibilities to the questions, who are we and where did we come from? In this episode, we'll take a deeper look at breaking down those questions with a fresh set of eyes, as we analyse the further possibilities. I do warn you though, some of this content may dance upon the lines of science fiction, challenging the constructs of your framework and beliefs. Okay, strap in your seatbelt, initiate the anti-gravity reactor, because we're going into deep space with this one. Hi, I'm Dominician R, Gennari, and I invite you to join me as we look into the obscured origins of the human race in this second episode of Forbidden Origins. So, mainstream science assures us we're the result of a chaos to order fusion of chemicals and elements that possibly came from bacteria trapped inside meteorites and comets that entered our solar system, crash landing here on Earth. The 150-year-old theory of evolution that is currently taught in our institutions and schools suggests we're the direct descendants of primates. But as you can see, the evidence doesn't really hold up. And I understand that many who follow this paradigm to this very day are still convinced that this is the case. But what if there was an alternative view on who we are and where we come from? What if there were other possibilities? What if our existence was far more stunning than what we've been led to believe? How did we get here? Well, we touched on panspermia in the first episode where microbes are interspersed throughout the universe. But that only takes us so far. I'd like to take this moment to review the organisation that feeds us most of our information when it comes to the cosmos. NASA. NASA, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, is an independent agency of the US federal government responsible for the civilian space program, as well as aeronautics and space research. That's all good, but the only issue with that statement is, even though NASA has set out a public relations division of their organisation, we must understand NASA is not really a civilian-based operation. This means NASA is not obliged to inform the citizens of planet Earth of any of its findings. Sure, Freedom of Information Act documents can be requested. However, redactions, the little blanked out lines in the text, and vetoes are commonplace with such requests. As a former guest on the Jimmy Church Fade to Black radio station, I discovered the works of John Greenwald and blackvault.com. John Greenwald requested a Freedom of Information Act FOIA document pertaining to the congressional record set in October 2017, disclosing NASA's $1 million project to prepare the world's religion for the possible discovery of extraterrestrial life. The details of this document set out the interdisciplinary dialogue across the relevant sciences and humanities such as astrobiology and anthropology, along with theology, ethics, and philosophy. This grant supports a symposium series in the form of a cohort of 40 prominent scholars who have worked at the highest level on the societal and humanistic implications of the multidisciplinary field of astrobiology. What this all means is there's an effort to evaluate the implications of extraterrestrial contact. The most NASA has elucidated when it comes to the ET question is the possibility of microbes on moons and other terrestrial planets in our solar system. According to them, us humans are the most significant form of sentience in the galaxy. So if this is NASA's stance, then why would they fund such research into the implications of ET contact? What other information has been sequestered? What do they really know about the cosmos? What do they know about the true origins of humanity? I've added a link in the description to the $1 million NASA grant FOIA document on the blackvault.com for you to further research. If you have time, take a look at the blackvault.com. Greenwald has done a great job of document acquisition within the FOIA system. but this was not the first time NASA have sought such controversial information about humanity. The Brookings Report was a renowned 1960s report commissioned by NASA and created by the Brookings Institution in collaboration with NASA's Committee on Long-Range Studies. Long-range basically meaning not from planet Earth. The report has become noted for one short section entitled "The Implications of a Discovery of Extraterrestrial Life," which examines the potential ramifications of such a discovery on public attitudes and values. The key words being attitudes and values. This section of the report considers potential public reactions to some possible scenarios for the discovery of extraterrestrial life, stressing a need for further research in this area. The report recommended further studies to determine what societal impacts would result if such a discovery was made public. It also includes the study of how leadership should handle information about such a discovery and under what circumstances leaders may or may not find it advisable to withhold such information from the public. Now that's amazing. The further we go down this path, there seems to be much more going on in space than what NASA is presenting. Is this $1 million funding from NASA the drip disclosure of extraterrestrial life that's been in the pipeline for decades? For those that aren't familiar, the word disclosure is used in the truther community in relation to the release and broadcasting of information pertinent to anything from extraterrestrials, government cover-ups, to the usurpation of human rights and the exploitation of humanity. I've come to understand there are people and institutions that would deem any such converse as being conspiratorial. As we take a look around, we can see that there are many private aerospace companies that join the ranks of NASA, acting as contractors providing research development within the field of space. Such players as SpaceX, Boeing, Northrop Grumman, Lockheed Martin, General Dynamics, Blue Origin, and Bigelow Aerospace all develop technologies for space applications. These are only the American companies. You've also got Europe, India, Russia, China, and many more. You're probably wondering why there are so many private aerospace companies, right? That's a really good question. So there must be money in developing technology and applications for space, right? Think about it for a moment. It makes sense for the aerospace industry to become privatized. Government-tied agencies like NASA would eventually come under civilian scrutiny and be subject to FOIA requests and other requests for disclosure. But if you were a private company, you would not be subjected to that same scrutiny. You would not have to disclose anything to anyone at any point in time. Now that's a perfect environment to classify information and technology. It's like someone wanting to know what you were doing inside your garage of your vacation home last Christmas. It just wouldn't happen. Here is the first few sentences from the Who Are We section of the Bigelow Aerospace website. Entrepreneur Robert T. Bigelow is the founder and president of Bigelow Aerospace, LLC. Headquartered in Las Vegas, Nevada, Bigelow Aerospace is a general contracting, research and development company that concentrates on achieving economic breakthroughs in the costs associated with the design, development and construction of habitable space structures for private enterprise and government use. It sounds good. It seems standard enough. But the last part of the opening statement where it states, for private enterprise and government use, sounds interesting to me. If you take a look at the alien head logo on the Bigelow Aerospace building, yes, it's probably just a play on theatrics. And that could very well be the case, but it kind of gets you thinking, right? Why have a little green man on the corner of your building? As the good saying goes, how do you keep a secret? You hide it in plain sight. I've left a link to the Bigelow Aerospace website in the description. On the 3rd of May 2013, Paul Hellier, the former Canadian Minister of Defence, made headlines by testifying before Congress about the existence of extraterrestrials and their frequent visitation to planet Earth over the past 2,000 years.
We are not alone in the cosmos. We have neighbors. We should try to get to understand them and to cooperate with them. Thank you.
Hellier states at least 4 species of aliens have been visiting Earth for thousands of years, with most of them coming from other star systems, although there are some living on Venus, Mars, and Saturn's moons. According to Hellier, they don't think we're good stewards of the planet. I wonder why. Hellier is demanding that world governments disclose alien technology that could be used to assist humanity. From healing technologies to free energy systems and anti-gravity propulsion, such advancements would elevate our current culture into a Star Trek-like civilization that journeys into the far reaches of the solar system and beyond. That sounds really cool, right? Could you imagine having gelato in an airtight trattoria on the surface of Jupiter's moon Europa? Now that would be a sight to see. Imagine the poverty that would be eliminated right here on Earth with these free energy systems. Imagine how happy people in developed countries would be not having to work hand to mouth just to put food on the table. I agree, these exotic technologies would need to be rolled out with ethics and caution, and by a wholesome consortium and governing body that is pro-humanity, and that includes involvement of the individual on a local council level. I believe this is the type of world in which we must strive to create. As we can clearly see, the current paradigm isn't working. It never has worked, and it never will work. I know, you're probably thinking this is all a whole bunch of tinfoil hat-wearing nonsense, but let me remind you, Paul Hellier was the former Minister of Defence for Canada, and not some insane person. Don't worry though, Paul Hellier isn't the first notable individual to have made these claims. Dr. Stephen Greer, a former ER doctor who gathered a star-studded who's who of the Aerospace, Defence Force and Congress communities at the National Press Club in 2001 for his groundbreaking disclosure project. With witness testimonies from 20 retired Air Force, Federal Aviation Administration and intelligence officers, a united front to disclose extraterrestrial contact with humanity had begun. This was such a defining moment in our history, yet most people have never heard of such an event, and nothing of the like has ever been done again. Further to the disclosure project, Dr. Stephen Greer released the documentaries Sirius, Unacknowledged and CE5, Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, where he claims there are unacknowledged special access projects that are more than 30 levels of security clearance above the President of the United States. Yes, you heard that one correctly. There are operations that even the President does not have access to. Dr. Stephen Greer has also developed a protocol to communicate with extraterrestrials and extra-dimensionals, as he believes we are not just contacted by extraterrestrials, but also beings that seem to phase shift in and out of our dimensional reality. From what we've learned about NASA not really being the civilian-based operation we expected, Dr. Stephen Greer's work may shed light on the obscured subject of our forbidden origins. Though I may not have entirely reached the same conclusions as Dr. Greer on his beliefs of who we are and where we come from, his documentaries are certainly worth the watch, especially as we attempt to piece together our forbidden origins. And remember, you must treat this as your own journey into terra incognita, or should I say, cosmos incognita. So how are you doing so far? I understand these topics appear to be far-fetched. Stay with me, you're doing really good. In a bold documentary by Jeremy Corbell titled Bob Lazar, Area 51 and Flying Saucers, physicist Bob Lazar broke the story of Area 51 in 1989 and the US government's work on alien spacecraft. He blew the whistle and shocked the world with his testimony of working on components of alien propulsion systems, anti-gravity, and the obscured otherworldly element capable of generating immense power called unpentium. The testimony of Lazar was buried in the late 1980s until momentum had developed with other whistleblowers, giving his story the spark it needed to reignite the possibility of alien craft being developed in compartmentalized programs. In recent news, the disclosure of unidentified craft has emerged from the ocean of noise surrounding the pandemic we're currently experiencing. With the establishment of United States Space Force, and no, I'm not referring to that crazy, wacky show on Netflix with Steve Carell. So what is Space Force? It sounds like something straight out of a Gene Roddenberry script. According to Wikipedia, the United States Space Force, USSF, is the space service branch of the US Armed Forces and is one of the 8 US uniformed services. Initially formed as Air Force Space Command on the 1st of September 1982, Space Force was established as an independent military branch on the 20th of December 2019, with the signing of the United States Space Force Act, which is part of the National Defense Authorization Act for 2020. This basically tells us space is being and has been militarized. Space Force is organized as a military service branch within the Department of Defense. The mandate, or you could say mission, of Space Force is rather interesting. Take a look at this. Congressional mandate. Established by the United States Space Force Act, Space Force's functions are 1. Provide freedom of operation for the United States in, from, and to space. 2. Provide prompt and sustained space operations. 3. Acquiring military space systems. And Space Force's stated duties are 1. Protect the interests of the United States and allied interests in space. 2. Deter aggression in, from, and to space. 3. Conduct space operations and maturing the military doctrine for space power. You can learn more about Space Force in the links I've inserted in the description. On the 13th of October 2020, another remarkable event happened amidst the planetary turmoil of the pandemic we're in right now. This relatively unnoticed event is the international signing of the Artemis Accords. And for those that may not know, the name Artemis is from Greek mythology. Known as the Huntress, Artemis is the daughter of Zeus and sister of Apollo, and she is typically depicted with the bow and arrow. Artemis is also considered the goddess of wild animals, the moon, and childbirth. I find these details quite interesting. Out of the entire pantheon of Greek gods and mythology, they chose Artemis, the Huntress, the goddess of the moon. Involved in these accords are the space agencies of Australia, Canada, Italy, Japan, Luxembourg, United Arab Emirates, United States of America, and the United Kingdom. And the purpose of these accords are principles for cooperation in the civil exploration and use of the moon, Mars, comets, and asteroids for peaceful purposes. These accords are noted as being for the benefit of all mankind. After reading the document, in which I found the signatories of this treaty, I also noticed there were some interesting elements of this joint effort which stood out. According to Section 9 of the 18-page Artemis Accords, titled Preserving Outer Space Heritage, a paragraph caught my attention. The signatories intend to preserve outer space heritage, which they consider to comprise historically significant human or robotic landing sites, artifacts, spacecraft, and other evidence of activity on celestial bodies in accordance with mutually developed standards and practices. To preserve outer space heritage. The word heritage can be defined as valued objects and qualities such as historic buildings and cultural traditions that have been passed down from previous generations. So I guess we can view the abandoned space module components of the Apollo missions as being the heritage they're referring to, along with the landing sites of the power-depleted Spirit and Opportunity Mars rovers. But what about the part where it says, and other evidence of activity on celestial bodies? You could say I may be looking into it, but apart from previous international missions that left robotics and spacecraft behind, what other artifacts and evidence of activity are these Accords referencing? Could it be evidence of advanced exoplanetary life? Could it be the efforts of a breakaway spacefaring civilization? Or could it just be our own space debris that needs to be bagged and tagged? Either way, the Artemis Accords, along with Space Force, are an intriguing effort on behalf of the multinational space agencies and private contractors, and I feel this may be the beginning of a long drawn-out disclosure of the forbidden origins of man. I'd like to take a look into the Artemis Accords on a future episode, as I really feel this is such a significant milestone that could possibly be another step forward in the disclosure of potential extraterrestrial life. And no, I don't just mean bacteria and microbes, but actual intelligent exoplanetary civilizations. You can learn more about the Artemis Accords in the links I've inserted into the description. To help you tie in some of the information I've just presented, I'd like to take this brief moment to review a past event that has continually surfaced throughout our history. Something crash landed at Roswell, New Mexico back in 1947. Official newspaper reports stated it was a flying saucer, a UFO, an unidentified flying object. The following day, the media's narrative changed and they reported it as a crashed weather balloon. But then the questions began. What really crashed there? Who was responsible? Were aliens involved? Or was it a backwards engineered version of an alien craft that belonged to us? Why did this story change overnight? Sid Mortner, executive editor of the International News photos at the time of the crash, quoted, "We now have the negatives in hand, and I can vouch for the fact that they have not been retouched or faked in any way, and that they are indeed actual photographs of a flying saucer." This Roswell crash has set a benchmark for one of the most debated and discussed phenomena on planet Earth. Let's take a look at this whole alien question for a brief moment. What does humanity have to lose from the disclosure of this subject? And in the same breath, what does it have to gain? Here's another question. What do the governing bodies of the world have to lose by disclosing this information? And in turn, what do they have to gain from its secrecy? These are truly profound questions, and how we resolve them will lead to our core values and beliefs, whatever they may be. One thing is for certain, there seems to be a lot of secrecy, and not just about the alien questions, but about who we really are. But I don't want to make this doom and gloom, as I believe much happiness, serenity, and the love of life can result from answering questions internally. Ask yourself right now, who am I? And it's okay if you don't have a deep philosophical answer to that. I really believe a lot of our anxieties, upsets, and depression stem from the lack of understanding of what we are and who we are. Let me give you an example. If the engine in your car stopped working and you had a firm understanding of combustion mechanics, you would be able to fix the engine and continue on with your day. You would even feel a sense of accomplishment and worth. But if that knowledge was suppressed by an individual, group, or organization telling you it's against the rules to know such things as mechanics, you would not be able to fix your car. You would feel sad. And lacking beingness and doingness, you would feel inadequate, worthless. You would cease to exist in that very moment. And that would be a terrible and upsetting trauma to be imposed upon you. Given enough of these drawbacks in life, man and woman would indeed cave in until they are numbed by controlling forces to fit into the survival of the fittest mechanism in our modern day world. To help you unpack the greatest fiction story known to humankind, please please refer to the links I've attached in the description section of this video and begin your own journey into the new story that is unfolding before our very eyes. Do you recall me stating our lives are being directed by the stories we're being told? Used with integrity, these stories can aid us in understanding who we are and where we're headed. Stories that are weaponized can lead to a dark and devastating future. I advise you all watching right now to use your own discernment and discover your own reality on this subject, because that is what true science should be: discovery, humility, revealing truth, even if it means opening up to different possibilities. The more we unpack the forbidden origins of our past, the more these stories will morph into new connections. I mean that in a completely hopeful and fortuitous way. I understand the alien topic can be rather confronting for some. I myself had a bit of trouble when I first began to research this subject, but I want you to know, if extraterrestrials are real and we are being contacted by them, there is more than enough evidence that we are safe and will continue to be safe. If a super intelligent, malevolent alien race wanted us gone from existence, I'm sure it would have happened a long time ago. However, my gut is telling me this is not the case. As much as the burning pain of truth can upset us, the inevitable byproduct of that truth is thought and contemplation, followed by liberation and then empowerment. Truth does not have to come at a cost, and how you accept these new stories will fall back on how you view yourself in this world. And that's why this whole topic is so powerful. I want to remind you of how important you are. You are powerful, you are infinite, you are more than an amalgamation of chemicals and elements. Never ever forget that. Thank you for watching this second episode of the Forbidden Origins series. I hope this information ignites a fire within you to further explore these possibilities. Don't forget to utilize the links in the description so that you can do your own research on these compelling subjects. I've worked around the clock on these episodes for you, and just so you know, I don't have a production team of 20 people scripting, filming, editing, composing. It's just me in my studio in Melbourne, Australia. I'll also keep you updated on my next fantasy sci-fi story that's in the works, and the long-awaited studio album I've been secretly working on amidst all this other work. I'd love you to subscribe to my channel, smash the notifications bell, and let me know what other topics you'd like me to talk about in the comment section. Stay tuned for the next episode in this series as we continue to unpack the greatest fiction story ever told. And together, let us ignite the truth.